Today we're going to start programming the mBot Mega robot. First, I'm going to show you a bunch of resources that are available to get you started with programming the robot. Then we're going to look at the mBlock 5 application that is provided by Makeblock. This is the tool that lets you program the robot using a graphical language that they have created. Okay, so the best way to get started is to go to the mBot Mega product page off of the Makeblock website, and then if you go to download, it'll take you to this section and I'll show you 3 links. The beginner's manual is useful. It's kind of more of an overview and then links you into a bunch of other things. I didn't think the programming examples were super useful, but you can definitely look into it. The one place that is useful is program the mBot Mega with mBlock 5. That takes you to the download page, so you can download the different applications for programming it using their graphical interface. Another place that is kind of interesting is this program mBot Mega in Arduino, where you can do the Arduino programming, and we'll talk more about Arduino programming a little bit later. Now, the getting started activities I found was a little bit more thorough, and it kind of gives you a lot more pages. Here we can see the build instructions that we followed when we did the build. It also came with a printout of these instructions, but now that I'm looking at this for the first time, it's nicer because it gives you animations, so you can kind of see this better. So if I'd known about this, I wouldn't have followed the printout. I would have come to this web page. Honestly, this would be better. The other thing is you can get to the same program mBot Mega with mBlock 5 page from here, the same Arduino page from here, and then it's a little bit better in terms of giving you initial programming examples. The beginner's manual takes you to these examples, but it's not really examples, it's just walkthroughs on how to get things set up, where these are true examples for programming. So if you click on control the LEDs, it talks about the LEDs and doing different things, and actually shows you the code you can write to make the LEDs do what you want in this example, which is flash in this example here. And we'll go through an example of using the mBlock 5 application to program it. Now, you can do all of this before you actually build your robot, and that can be useful. Obviously, I did not do that. I built the robot to start, and then found these programming tutorials. So I would definitely recommend you go to getting started activities and not beginner's manual. So like we mentioned, there are really 2 ways you can program the mBot Mega. You can use the mBlock 5 application, and here is the page to go and download the application. There's a PC version you can just download. There's also a web version which you can use. So you can use your Chrome browser, and then you still have to install this mLink application to do that, so that you can connect to the robot. You go to this page and you can download the appropriate software. So this will just open up a web page for you, the code with blocks on the web version. Download the PC version, which is what we'll do today. And then if you're using web, you need to download this mLink software. I played with both, and they are pretty much identical in terms of functionality. So let's go ahead and open up the mBlock software. And the first time you open it, you'll get this screen. Now, one of the weird things is that this application seems to be defaulting to the CyberPi device. Now I didn't know what that was, so if we go over here and we kind of look to see what this is, CyberPi. Right? So you can buy this, but it's not even a featured product on their homepage, which makes it a little bit weird that the application defaults to CyberPi. You can add the mBot Mega by clicking on the add and seeing mBot Mega, and then you can highlight this to set this as your most used device. So what that will do is that will replace the CyberPi as the default functionality, and I should delete the CyberPi device as an option. So now if I close this off, don't save that, and then I reopen the application, mBot Mega is the default device. Then there's this section here, which I'm not really sure what this does. I think this is for the CyberPi device, which is a video game console thing that you can program your own video game in. So I don't really know what that is. But so on this screen, the main thing is down here on the left hand side is what we're going to be focused on. And here is how we program the robot itself. Now we need to connect to the robot, and a driver would have been installed that would let you do that. And once you connect the USB cable to the robot, to their MegaPi electronic device, it'll show up, and then the COM port will be whatever it is. Yours may say COM 3, COM 5, something else. Mine is COM 8, and then I can connect to it. Now there are two modes. There's a live mode and an upload mode. The live mode is kind of cool because I can control things from my computer and have the robot do something interesting. So for example, I'm going to set up this application. When I click the green flag, all the motors will rotate at 50% power. I will then wait for 2 seconds, and then I will stop all the motors. So now if I click on the green, all the motors turn and they stop after 2 seconds. Now one thing to be aware of is this red button here. It terminates the application, or at least whatever is running, but if something's in motion, it doesn't terminate that. So for example, if I click on the green flag and then hit stop, you'll see that the motors continue to run, and they will run for much longer than 2 seconds. So in order to have that not happen anymore, or to stop the motors, I hit the green flag again, let the application run through its proper cycle, and then the motors will stop. So just be aware that if you're using this live mode, stop will terminate the application, but things that are currently in motion could continue to happen. And that's an important lesson when we're talking about robots in general. We have to be careful of when we terminate the application, because things that are currently occurring may just continue to occur, and then your robot crashes or falls off the table or something like that. The other mode is then the upload mode, and this is when I upload the application to the robot, so I no longer need to be connected to it from the computer. And you'll notice that a number of these blocks become grayed out, and this becomes grayed out. So if I try to upload this, it fails because I can't program the robot in upload mode with this when green flag clicked. So now if I want to do this, I can say, well, when the mBot Mega starts, go ahead and do the same thing. I click on upload, and it will upload the program to the robot itself. It uploads, and then it just starts to run. And now that application, this program won't run again until we reset the mBot Mega. Now one of the things to be aware of is that when you're moving the motors, the robot does need to be turned on. when you plug in the USB cable to the MegaPi will be powered on by the USB cable. So just to program it, you don't need to have the batteries connected, and that's what happens when you turn on the switch. But if you then try to run the motors won't turn. So in order to get the full functionality, you have to have the USB cable plugged in and then also have the robot turned on by the main switch. Now if we go back to live and we try to do this again, see when thing is flipped, do that. Notice how the update here comes on. This turns yellow and we have to click update and then say firmware update, and we go ahead and click update again. Because what is happening in the live mode is that there's an application on the robot itself that we are interacting with. So this program, when we say we have to reconnect after we upload the firmware. So when we click on the green flag, that is sending some commands to the robot to execute this set of instructions. It's not directly on the robot, and that's why we had to upload the firmware, because we have to replace the program that we previously had put on when we did this program with the one that Makeblock created to be able to control it in that live mode. Okay, so I kind of jumped around a little bit in terms of how the programming language itself works. So let's talk about that for a second. All right. In live mode, there are a couple things you can do. So when these events are things that can happen while the program is running, and you'll notice that the things that have a little curve at the top are kind of starting nodes. So the program starts with one of these events, and if it has this little notch in the block, it means I can connect it to another block, and it can't be at the start of the program. Looks is all about the RGB LEDs. Motion is all about the motors. Sensing is our obstacle avoidance sensor, line following sensor, crash sensor. All right, so this is the infrared sensors at the front of the robot. These are the infrared sensors underneath the robot, and these are the bump switches at the back of the robot. Control is basic programming logic. Repeat something 10 times or n number of times. We can change the value 10 there. Repeat forever. So typically for your program, you want to have this thing just go on forever. Especially when you upload, you need to have something happen forever. Otherwise, your robot may run for a little while and then stop. If then and if then else statements, right? Conditionals, operators to do comparisons or math or logical operations. You can create variables, and then you can create kind of sublocks, which are the same as like functions. I won't dive into how to program or programming basics. That's something you can learn, and they have some interesting tutorials here on how to do that. So if we go back to the getting started activities section and we look at the programming cases, you go through these, and it will help you understand how to do the programming using the mBlock tool. But today what we want to do is we want to do a simple example of how to use this. So let's go into upload mode. We'll say when the mBot Mega starts up, we are going to do this forever. And then I'm going to say if the crash sensor, the bump sensor, is pressed, then I want to turn on the RGB and turn it to red. Otherwise, I want to make it green. And I'll make this a darker green, like that maybe. Okay, cool. So a couple things to point out here with this simple application. First thing, what we're doing, we're checking to see if one of the bump sensors is pressed. If it is, then we're going to change the color of the LED that's presented. It's either green if nothing's pressed, or red if it is pressed. One thing you have to be aware of is which pin the bump sensor is connected and which pin the LEDs are connected to. So in order to do that, we have to go back to the getting started section and figure out which, or remember which things the LEDs are connected to. So the easiest way to do that is to go to the build mBot mega page and then find this these diagrams. So you can see that the LEDs are connected to A13 and A14. So this is upside down. The right hand side, if you're looking at the robot, then this is the back here. If you're looking at the robot, then the left hand side, your left, is A14 and your right would be A13. And then the bump switches are going to be A12 and A11. So if we go back to the program, we're saying if the right hand side bump switch is pressed, then the right hand side LED is going to turn red, or if it's not pressed, it's going to turn green. Now this turns on bead thing is interesting. So the RGB LED circuit itself has 4 LEDs, and we can see that. Again, go back to getting started and look at the about. Here they'll show you there are 4 LEDs on the LED module. So when they say bead in this section is which one of these will turn on. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We are going to turn on bead 1. So this LED is what's going to turn on here for us. If we want to turn on more than one, then we need to duplicate this this block, and we can do that by right clicking and saying duplicate. But for now, we're just going to turn on the one. So to delete, we drag it off the screen into the trash here like that. So we're going to do that, and then yeah, we're going to go ahead and upload that program. Now that we've uploaded the application to the robot, we can test it out. So if I push the right side bumper, the right side LED turns from green to red. But if I push the left side bumper, nothing happens. And actually you'll see that the left side bumper is a darker green than the right side bumper. And that's because we didn't touch the right side bumper code, and it's just using the default values from the original application. If I want to make it so that both bump sensors do the same thing, then I can duplicate this, and I change this to be A12 and then A14. Because if we go back to our diagram here, it's A12 is the bump switch, A12 that we care about, and then A14 is the LED that we want to turn on. Now one nice thing about using this tool is that it limits what you can select. You can only select between the two options, A13 and A14. So you can either look at this diagram to figure out how it was connected into the robot, or if you are using it before you build the robot, then you will be able to see which pin everything was connected to. Right, so we can see that with this new application uploaded, now when I push the right side bumper, it goes from green to red. If I push the left side bumper, it goes from green to red. And I can push both of them together and they'll both turn to red at the same time. Okay, so that's a very simple example of programming using the mBlock 5 application. It's pretty nice in order to do this. pretty useful if you're getting started. The graphical programming tool is always kind of nifty. It is a little bit awkward to use. Like it's hard to delete things. You have to select and then delete, and things are all grouped together. I'm sure if you use it for a while and this is your primary way of programming the robot, it's not too bad. It's a little bit awkward for me. I keep wanting to select things and use it more like a diagram tool, and that's not what it is. So something to be aware of. But once you get to a certain point, this becomes a little bit tricky. There are sub-blocks that you can make, but there were some limitations on those that I found somewhat awkward. One thing I want to talk about is that when you start programming the mBot Mega, you are going to replace the application that's on the robot out of the box. So if you remember, when you plugged everything in, we were able to connect to it using the Bluetooth on your phone and then driving it around. And there were also options for obstacle avoidance and line following. But there can only be one program on the robot at any one point in time. So when we uploaded our program just now, we are replacing the out of the box application. So now we will not be able to control it and do the obstacle avoidance and line following behaviors that came out of the box. And if we look at the frequently asked questions section in the Getting Started Activities page, then we will see it tells us that, right? We can't use the default functions after. And then it takes us to this link on updating the firmware of the mBot Mega. And the main thing, like we saw before, was that you need to put this in live mode, and then eventually it will ask us to update the software. And then we click firmware update and we select which version we want. Now they tell us here what the difference is. The online firmware version is what we want to use if we're going to be doing the online programming mode, or when you use the app to remotely control the mBot Mega. Right, so this version is recommended. You can restore the one that you got when you came out of the box with the factory firmware. And this is what will enable the gesture recognition, the obstacle avoidance, and the line following. Okay, so those are the two. We can reset to the out of the box factory firmware by selecting that. We click update, and then the robot should work like it did when you first put it together. There we have a first look at programming the mBot Mega using the mBlock 5 application provided by Makeblock. This lets you program the mBot Mega using their graphical programming language. Graphical programming languages are great starting points, but eventually I think you do have to move to a text-based language. For beginners and kids, great way to start because it gives you a visual representation of what you need to do, and you don't have to learn a lot of syntax. You can just look at the blocks and draw what you want to do. The application itself is good, but a little bit awkward because it does kind of be a catch-all for all of their hardware. The fact that it starts with defaulting to the CyberPi hardware is a little bit weird. And then there's things on the screen that are unrelated to programming the mBot completely. However, not terrible, and I think it's a great tool. You're able to get up and running very quickly. In a future video, we're going to look at how to program using C and Arduino tools, and I think that will be the next step up from this tool here, once you've kind of started wanting to do more complex behaviors and building more complex applications. That's it for now. Talk to you soon. Later.